Well, welcome everybody. So this is actually the stage in which I'm going to be putting on all of the tube fins using epoxy and filling all of the fillets. And you're going to see that I already started the process here. I've put on one of the fins already, and it was in fact because I was also lining up and placing the rail buttons. You'll see that there's a couple washers on the bottom of that one so that it steps high enough to get to the same height as the rail button inside of the tube here. So naturally, when this goes on the rail, it's going to have to slip through one of the tubes to remain close to the body of the rocket, and I have clearance. I've already tested inside of there. So now what we're doing is I'm starting to size up the other fins, and this was a little bit of a tricky job. I did this over the course of multiple days because I really didn't want to, well, you'll see as we go, put too much pressure on a new fin that was already trying to dry. And so in order to really epoxy them in firmly and press so that they were touching, but then had fillets in multiple locations for each fin, you can start to see here. You can see there's 3 fillets on the inner part where each of the fins touch, and then on the outside there's a singular one. And so when I place another one on the side of this, you'll see an outside one as well, and an additional 3 within the crevice that touches the body tube itself. All right, now we jump forward a little bit, and you can see that at this point I put 5 of the 6 fins on. I didn't film the whole series because admittedly it's a lot of repetition and a lot of frustration. This was one of the hardest parts of the build by far, dealing with all that sticky epoxy, especially those small spaces where the 3 fillets are, where the fin tubes touch, in the body itself. So here I'm going to show you the whole process, or most of the process, of putting on the last fin. And you can see I'm going to first line it up. I've used some blue masking tape in an attempt to make some of the cleanup easier, neater overall fillets. That worked to some degree. I don't know if I'd fully recommend it. However, what you're going to see here is it at least helped me line up, and I also had some pencil marks I had previously etched onto the tube fins, where when I had placed this down dry at first, I made sure to mark little tabs where the fin was actually touching each other, and that way I knew exactly where to put a lot of the epoxy. So this part I'm just wiping up some of the excess, and I'm going to then press firmly down on this tube so it's making solid contact with 3 points here, the 2 other fins on either side and the body itself. Now I'm starting to use my finger here just to smooth out the external fillets, admittedly the easier part of the whole deal. And what I'm doing is I'm sort of rounding it down so that it fills in even more that final gap on the bottom and top of the fins where they connect to the rest. Now, while I'm doing this, because at this point you're going to be seeing me do this quite a bit, I'll explain just some of the other pieces that were important for this build. So, like I mentioned in a previous video, a lot of my preparation for this was a lot of surface prep. And so that ended up being, what I'm originally familiar with in terms of prepping fiberglass for bonding, which was when I first got all this stuff and cut all my tubes. I ended up giving this about a 15-minute water bath that I wiped everything down with isopropyl. I did some grit sanding with 80 grit sandpaper on every surface I knew that would be eventually bonded, and then I re-wiped down with isopropyl alcohol. Now after this, I learned that actually what's pretty nifty is doing about 10 seconds or so of wiping of acetone, which chemically gets out quite a lot of contaminants within surfaces, and then following up with a little bit of isopropyl. So maybe overkill, but I ended up doing that again as well here for a little bit of extra insurance. And that's actually why there's a pretty dulled finish on some of these tubes, well, really all of them, because really that was adding to just eliminating a lot of the smooth and extra contaminants that were on the outside of the surface, and added to what I think and hope will be quite a stronger bonding surface overall. Now what you're seeing here, back to what's going on in the video, is I am trying with these little popsicle sticks to smooth out the internal fillets. Now this is and was incredibly difficult. You can see me going back here with some extra globs, really trying to make sure that the entirety of the crevice on the inside is covered and amounting to a good bond and surface area underneath. I experimented in different ways with this. I just out of practicality ended up using a pencil or two as well that was in my workshop, and that actually worked pretty darn well. I'd maybe even swear by that over top of the popsicle stick to a degree. The blue tape, the issue I did run into is when I was pulling that up to remove it. I had already weakened the sticky surface a little so that it would be easier to remove, but when I was sliding it out, about 30 to 40% of the time I would use this tape and slide it out. Some edge of the tape would grab on some big amount of the epoxy inside that had already been perfectly set and just rip it out, and so then I'd have to re-pour, re-bond like with these popsicle sticks. It all worked out in the end, but man, what a frustrating race against time. It was 30-minute epoxy, but I mean, at this point, when you're doing this many fillets, time moves pretty quick. And here you can see it's finally done. Now drying, of course, and while I went back and added a little extra on the outside fillets for just a touch of smoothness, admittedly very pleased with this at this point. It is looking as good as I would hope it to look before painting, and I even added a little bit of extra epoxy on this, not at all on the button, to just round that out so it looks cleaner in the end. And with that, I want to thank you for joining, and please tune in for the next couple of videos that'll be finishing out this build in its entirety.